who had inconsiderately sent her to so great a distance by night and alone, and as it was not improbable that if she found herself near home she might take farewell of me and deprive me of the opportunity. I avoided the most frequented ways and took the most intricate, and thus it was not until we arrived in the street itself that she knew where we were. Clapping her hands with pleasure, and running on before me for a short distance, my little acquaintance stopped at a door, and remaining on the step till I came up, knocked at it when I joined her. A part of this door was of glass, unprotected by any shutter, which I did not observe at first, for all was very dark and silent within, and I was anxious, as indeed the child was also, for an answer to our summons. When she had knocked twice or thrice, there was a noise as if some person were moving inside, and at length a faint light appeared through the glass, which, as it approached very slowly, the bearer having to make his way through a great many scattered articles, enabled me to see both what kind of person it was who advanced, and what kind of place it was through which he came. It was an old man with long grey hair, whose face and figure, as he held the light above his head and looked before him as he approached, I could plainly see. Though much altered by age, I fancied I could recognize in his spare and slender form something of that delicate mould which I had noticed in a child. Their bright blue eyes were certainly alike, but his face was so deeply furrowed and so very full of care, that here all resemblance ceased. The place through which he made his way at leisure was one of those receptacles for old and curious things which seem to crouch in odd corners of this town, and to hide their musty treasures from the public eye, in jealousy and distrust. There were suits of mail standing like ghosts in armour here and there, fantastic carvings brought from monkish cloisters, rusty weapons of various kinds, distorted figures in china and wood and iron and ivory, tapestry and strange furniture that might have been designed in dreams. The haggard aspect of the little old man was wonderfully suited to the place. He might have groped among old churches and tombs and deserted houses, and gathered all the spoils with his own hands. There was nothing in the whole collection but was in keeping with himself, nothing that looked older or more worn than he. As he turned the key in the lock, he surveyed me with some astonishment, which was not diminished when he looked from me to my companion. The door being opened, the child addressed him as grandfather, and told him the little story of our companionship. "Why, bless thee, child," said the old man, patting her on the head, "how couldst thou miss thy way? What if I had lost thee, Nell?" "I would have found my way back to you, grandfather," said the child boldly. "Never fear." The old man kissed her. Then turning to me and begging me to walk in, I did so. The door was closed and locked. Preceding me with the light, he led me through the place I had already seen from without, into a small sitting room behind, in which was another door opening into a kind of closet, where I saw a little bed that a fairy might have slept in, it looked so very small, and was so prettily arranged. The child took a candle and tripped into this little room, leaving the old man and me together. "You must be tired, sir," said he, as he placed a chair near the fire. "How can I thank you?" "By taking more care of your grandchild another time, my good friend," I replied. "More care?" said the old man in a shrill voice. "More care of Nelly? Why, who ever loved a child as I love Nell?" He said this with such evident surprise that I was perplexed what answer to make, and the more so because, coupled with something feeble and wandering in his manner, There were in his face marks of deep and anxious thought, which convinced me that he could not be, as I had been at first inclined to suppose, in a state of dotage or imbecility. 'I don't think you consider,' I began. 'I don't consider,' cried the old man, interrupting me. 'I don't consider her. Ah, how little you know of the truth, little Nelly, little Nelly!' It would be impossible for any man, I care not what his form of speech might be, to express more affection than the dealer in curiosities did, in these 4 words. I waited for him to speak again, but he rested his chin upon his hand, and shaking his head twice or thrice, fixed his eyes upon the fire. While we were sitting thus in silence, the door of the closet opened, and the child returned, her light brown hair hanging loose about her neck, and her face flushed with the haste she had made to rejoin us. She busied herself immediately in preparing supper, and while she was thus engaged, I remarked that the old man took an opportunity of observing me more closely than he had done yet. I was surprised to see that all this time everything was done by the child, and that there appeared to be no other persons but ourselves in the house. I took advantage of a moment when she was absent to venture a hint on this point, to which the old man replied that there were few grown persons as trustworthy or as careful as she. 'It always grieves me,' I observed, roused by what I took to be his selfishness, 'it always grieves me to contemplate the initiation of children into the ways of life, when they are scarcely more than infants. It checks their confidence and simplicity, 2 of the best qualities that Heaven gives them, and demands that they share our sorrows before they are capable of entering into our enjoyments.' 'It will never check hers,' said the old man, looking steadily at me. 'The springs are too deep. Besides, the children of the poor know but few pleasures. Even the cheap delights of childhood must be bought and paid for. But, forgive me for saying this, you are surely not so very poor?' said I. 'She is not my child, sir,' returned the old man. 'Her mother was, and she was, poor. I save nothing, not a penny, though I live as you see. But,' he laid his hand upon my arm, and leant forward to whisper, 'she shall be rich one of these days, and a fine lady. Don't you think ill of me because I use her help. She gives it cheerfully, as you see, and it would break her heart if she knew that I suffered anybody else to do for me what her little hands could undertake. I don't consider,' he cried with sudden querulousness, 'why, God knows that this one child is the thought and object of my life, and yet he never prospers me. No, never.' At this juncture the subject of our conversation again returned, and the old man, motioning to me to approach the table, broke off and said no more. We had scarcely begun our repast, when there was a knock at the door by which I had entered, and Nell, bursting into a hearty laugh, which I was rejoiced to hear, for it was childlike and full of hilarity, said it was no doubt dear old Kit coming back at last. 'Foolish Nell,' said the old man, fondling with her hair, 'she always laughs at poor Kit.' The child laughed again, more heartily than before. I could not help smiling from pure sympathy. The little old man took up a candle and went to open the door. When he came back, Kit was at his heels. Kit was a shock-headed, shambling, awkward lad, with an uncommonly wide mouth, very red cheeks, a turned-up nose, and certainly the most comical expression of face I ever saw. He stopped short at the door on seeing a stranger, twirled in his hand a perfectly round old hat without any